Hello and welcome to this lesson of the Esperanto course. In this video we're going to be looking at some of the most basic suffixes that can be added to what we call word roots. In doing this we are going to start to actually use Esperanto to form some sentences, as these suffixes will allow us to use some of the basic verbs to manipulate some nouns. Just as a reminder as to how these basic sentences work, remember that in a very simple sentence such as I have a house, we've got three important parts. In the case of I, one of the personal pronouns that we learned last video, this is what we call the subject, the person or the thing in the sentence that's doing the action. In the case of have or has, this is the verb, what action or activity that's being taken, which in the case of have is a possession. And finally, you have the object, in this case the house. That is the target of the activity or the action. Now this can be any type of noun. It could be an inanimate object, a real name, or another personal pronoun. So we could say, I have a house, or I see you, or she loves Brad. All very simple sentences following the same basic pattern. So let's get started on some verbs. Verbs, actually like most words in Esperanto, begin with a root component, and many of them will be very familiar to you, as many of them started in ancient European languages like Latin or Greek, and eventually became, with some variations, a part of many other languages, including English. Even from some of the verbs that you're not familiar with, because English has evolved over time, pretend that you're speaking like somebody in the 18th or the 19th century in a period costume drama, and you'll start to recognize even more. Even if you do not recognize the verbs as verbs, you may recognize the roots as other words. First of all, we have a very common verb, est, or to be. A very flexible verb that we use everywhere in a wide range of forms. While we have est, ist, estas in other European languages, you may not initially recognize est as being is in English, because it has evolved. But we still use it as the root for other words with roughly the same definition, like establish, to bring into being. We also have, well, have for have and vid for see. For that one, think about how we use that root in words like video. For now, we'll keep to these three simple roots, est, have and vid, to demonstrate how they work. Now the only time we ever use these root words is to be a foundation for adding affixes, letters that we can add to the beginning or the end of the root to make them useful when speaking. The first, very simple addition is the affix I or I, which turns a root into an infinitive verb form. Now by that we mean esti becomes to be, havi to becomes to have, vidi to see. Far more useful for the example sentences that we're going to practice, however, is the suffix as or as, which is what we add to a verb to make it into the present tense. Estas therefore means being or is or are, right now, ongoing. Havas, I have something right now, I am having something right now. Now do remember that possession is all have means. We sometimes use have in English to mean I must do something, but that's something that's evolved in English over a period of time. We don't use that form in Esperanto. Finally, we have vidas. I see something, I am seeing something right now. In all of these cases, listen to where we stress Esperanto words. The penultimate or second to the last vowel. Havas, vidas and estas. Though of course in the case of estas, that just happens to be the first letter as well. A very simple sentence we could make right now is therefore to say our name in one of the many ways that we can do that. Mi estas Craig. Give it a try. Say I am and then your name to practice a very simple sentence. Mi estas. Now at this point, if you know other European languages, you may be wondering what the other forms of this present tense is. How do we say you are, they are, we are, he is, she is? You see, even in English, that verb is changing according to what we are using as a personal pronoun. In other languages, this may also change according to whether the word is what we call masculine, feminine, or neuter, its gender. In Esperanto, however, there is no change, there is no gender. Now that you've learned the suffix as for present tense verbs, that's it, you know them all. Mi estas, vi estas, she estas, li estas, gi estas, ili estas. For practice, try that as well. Move around your family pointing them out and saying, you are, or pointing someone else out and saying, he is or she is. So next up, let's look at the object of the sentence, the nouns. To make any root word into a noun is very simple. We just add o or o to the end of the root. Now from our original example, house is dom, which you may recognize from domesticate or domicile, a fancy word for home in the first place. To make the conceptual root word dom into an actual home, a noun, we add the o, and it just becomes domo. In Esperanto, we do not have an indefinite article. That's the word a or an to mean one example of something non-specific, like a house or a car or an elephant. If you want to say a house in Esperanto, it's still just domo. In Esperanto, we do still have the definite article. That's the word the, to point out one specific example of something, the house, the car, the elephant. It's very easy to remember in Esperanto, however, as the word is just la. And we don't have to change it, such as in French or Spanish for gender, as again, there are no word genders. So now we know three of the important things about using nouns in a sentence. All nouns end in o, domo. We do not need indefinite articles, so a house is still just domo. But we do need definite articles, so the house is la domo. Now there is only one final thing to know about our noun, and that is one more suffix that we need to add based upon where it is in the sentence. So far, we've been talking about our house as if it's the subject, not the object. Identifying what is a subject and what is an object in most languages is actually more complicated than it seems, and we tend to forget that because we learned all of the different patterns over a long period of time, absorbing English over years of childhood. If I said, I have a house, you know what the subject is, I, and the object, house. If I said, a house I have, or house have I, sounding more like Yoda, this would be a very strange way of saying things in English, but you'd still recognize what was the subject and what was the object through years of exposure, even if you were not able to explain why you know. But Esperanto is designed as a second language. It might actually be being used by an English speaker, but it might be being used by someone in whose language a house I have is the normal way of arranging the grammar, and therefore might reverse the meaning. So how do we remove that possible confusion? In Esperanto, it's very easy. We just mark the object by adding an n suffix to it. So dom becomes domo as a noun, and becomes domon as a noun object. I have a house, mi havas domon. I have a house, domon mi havas. There is no confusion. While the first is the norm, the second is equally definite in what the object is. It's still the noun ending in n. Okay, so let's have some practice by learning some more nouns and making sentences. First, let's introduce that final additional letter that we hinted at in the last video by looking at auto. This variation of U has a small cup above it, rather than the pointed hat we looked at last time. It's pretty easy for an English speaker to recognize what it means, therefore, because if you look at it, it really is a double U, and gives us its pronunciation. This noun for car is therefore auto. We also have chambro, room, carotto, carrot, suno, sun, luno, moon. Between now and the next video, try combining these words in different combinations and get some sentences in your head, remembering to add la when you need it. Mi havas auton, I have a car. Gi estas chambro, it is a room. Ŝi vidas la sunon, she sees the sun. Li vidas la lunon, he sees the moon. But here's a bit of a puzzle. If we said that objects have an n suffix, why did I say gi estas chambro? Why is it not on mi estas carotto? See if you can figure that one out, and I'll see you in the next video.